Amen.
I brought this off of my altar because it reminds me of
Oh,
you. It's my Wonder Woman.
I'm so flattered.
My my best friend's husband bought this for me. I carry her, but I'm so excited to have this conversation. Let's be honest. I don't know if you feel this way, but I've been like wanting, I mean, this is really our first formal conversation, but we've been meaning to be having all these side friend conversations for months.
Yeah.
So basically everyone's getting like a VIP entrance into our budding friendship. Welcome everybody to me and
Totally.
Jen's. We're like, oh my God, I want to talk to you. Oh my God, I want to come to this. Oh my God, I want to do this. So here we are
So
on the
here we are.
podcast. Okay, I'm going to ask you the last question on the podcast first, and then we'll start from there. What do you think?
Sure. I have like not prepped at all for this. I have
I
literally
know.
no idea what we're going to talk about.
I felt
And
exactly the same way. I listened to
and
one
I love it.
podcast that you were on, and then I was like, we're good. I don't want to know anything else.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, listen to one podcast, and I read a little bit
So
of
fun.
the website, but like I usually do. I know it's so great. I love us. Okay, what do you think?
I'm turning
We
off my email so you don't hear the ding.
Oh,
Okay,
great.
go ahead.
What do you think we are really craving? We'll just start light.
Yeah, like we as humans
Yeah,
on this planet.
sure. Maybe also as like identifying women or
Yeah.
humans. Yeah, sure, whatever. Whatever comes to mind, whatever comes to spirit.
Well, I'm always hesitant to speak for all people because I feel like we all have,
Yeah.
we're all on our own journeys here on this planet, and I think our souls all show up here for different reasons. But uh I know I, as a woman, I think what I'm craving more than anything is freedom.
Mm,
And I think that freedom looks very different for different people, but I think that for me, freedom means like freedom from like these constraints and expectations that get put on us, like from our culture and from our world. And so I don't know, I feel like I'm in this constant sort of exploration of like, ooh, I want that thing. And then I'm like, why do I want that thing? And then 9 times out of 10, I feel like we want those things because we think we're supposed to want those things because something in our culture or our world has told us that those are the things we're supposed to want. But like to me, true freedom is like really like getting in touch with like what your soul really, really wants and really came here for, and kind of um like that's what I'm hungry for, you know?
yeah, me too. That's why I started the podcast because I'm hungry for that answer. And I wish
Yeah.
that answer happened when we were chatting, right? Like
Yeah.
that gave me the chills that we just, and there's this prayer. I just know it from AA, and it says sort of like relieve me of the bondage of self, right?
Yeah.
Which to me means like all of these outside things that are sticking to me, that are distracting me from truth and from freedom. Like
Yeah.
that's exactly right. And like being of service and like being awake,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How did you?
Yeah. And oh,
Oh, go on.
sorry. And I was just going to say, like, I think for women in particular, the work you do around food and body is like essential because I think that that is, in my opinion, the number one thing that our culture puts upon us that like our souls do not understand.
So I was doing this work that somebody was asking me to do today, and I think it's not, there are no coincidences that you're the person that I'm talking to. And I was just kind of thinking about my own desire, and what came out of it was like, because this is after I wrote breaking up with sugar, I got an enormous audience, more than the 100 people I treat a year or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And what I noticed is it actually doesn't matter if you're addicted to sugar. I mean, it does in some ways, but if you're addicted to diet culture
Mm-hmm.
and you're obsessed with what with the lies that they're selling you, and you'll go to the ends of the earth to acquire them since they cannot be acquired, it actually, your sugar addiction won't matter because you'll get on the scale and it won't say what you, or you'll look a certain way. And anyway, this I know you want to talk about with me. And so you go, because I've talked enough.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I didn't come with any
Yeah,
preparations or
but that's something like,
expectations,
because
but
that's really at Own Your Worth. That's really like what you're talking about, right? Which makes me so happy.
I don't know if I'm gonna get to. She wants me to talk about something else, but
If it were
but
your
I'm gonna. I
dream,
mean,
if your
I'll weave it
dream
in.
came up, but that's what you're talking about these days, isn't it?
It is what I'm talking about these days because it's actually been my personal journey for my lifetime, and but specifically in the last 3 years, 4 years, um, the first time in my life that I ever heard the phrase breaking up with diet culture. Like, I'm like, what does that mean? Like, what are you talking about? And so I've done a like deep dive into it for myself over the past 3 years. And just to give you some background, like, I've struggled with my weight my entire life, up and down. I was the fat kid growing up, and
Oh,
and then went on.
namaste, babe. No wonder we
Yeah,
love each other so
I know.
much.
And then I went on like the diet in high school and suddenly lost all this weight. And then all of a sudden the boys were looking at me when they hadn't before. And then just up and down my whole life. And had been relatively down for probably the last 10 years. And then the pandemic hit, and I had been on this medication for a long time. I went off of it. Next thing I knew, 40 pounds on my body.
Right.
And also perimenopause, which, I think a lot of women my age in their late 40s, 50s are things are happening to your body that you have zero control over.
Mhm.
But all of a sudden I found myself heavier than I'd been in a decade and trying to do all the things to change my body, fix my body, you know, and and then um and then I just started reading about, I think the first book I picked up was The Fuck It Diet.
Mhm.
And then just started picking up all these other books about, um, just some really beautiful fat positive work that's out there right now by some, you know, Sonia Renee Taylor's book, which I just think is so beautiful. The
What's
Body's Not
that
an
called
Apology.
for?
It's
Uh,
called The Body's Not an Apology.
mhm.
Um, and just really kind of digging into um, I just think there's this real cause and effect thinking that we have, like that I will be happy when my body looks a certain way. And that happiness is like out there in the future, and it's only obtainable in what you do to control and manipulate your body. And if you're able to succeed in that, then you will reach the happiness.
Yeah.
and and I went back and I was looking at pictures of myself, um and I've sort of like self-diagnosed myself with body dysmorphia because
Yeah.
there are times in my life where I was convinced I was like obese.
Mhm.
And I look back at these pictures and I'm like, I look fucking fantastic. Well, am I allowed to swear on your podcast?
Yeah. It's our love language. Yeah.
I'm like, I look fucking fantastic. I would die to look like that again.
Mm.
What was my problem? And I went back and I realized that it didn't matter if I was a size 6 or a size 16 in those pictures. I always felt the same way
Mhm.
inside of my body, which was not good enough, not where I wanted to be, not enough, not enough, not enough, right? And I was like, and I just kind of got to this place with myself where I was like, no more. Like I like no more. Like I'm not going to go on a diet. I'm not going to restrict. I'm going to do the inner work first because I need to believe that if I if I love myself, then my body will be beautiful. Not if my body is beautiful, then will I love myself. Then I
Mhm.
will love myself. Like I need to switch that cause and effect to the other way around. So that's what I've been working on.
That's beautiful.
And I'm not like here to say like, this is super easy. Everybody should do this.
Yeah, I think my curiosity, because I used to be so hardcore about behaviorism, given that
Yeah.
I was a trained behaviorist. And I think the older I get, I think the more spiritual I get.
Yep.
Those two things put together, and I guess that is a recipe for softening, isn't it? And so, and I was raised when I first got trained in behaviorism in like calorie counting, fat gram, and it's like holy eating disorder, Batman. No, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm curious though about this is what I think, like, because I just know because I come from like such big numbers. And when I was at 325 pounds, what I was doing at that time to my body was not loving.
Yeah.
And so taking some action that I guess may look diety, but taking some action around healthying up my relationship with food
Yeah.
did help me with the internal. Like I think this is why I think I mean, I saw the meme this morning. It's like, who's making money off of you hating your body today? Am I
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
But I think it's like, I don't know. I wonder what you think about this middle path of like, sometimes I think when we say this love yourself thing, people take it to mean that because the body positivity is very against anybody releasing any weight or deciding that they want to release weight. Look what they just did to
Yeah.
Rebel Wilson and even Lizzo when she's working out, everyone's having like a big fit over it.
Yeah.
I'm so curious. What do you think about that?
Well, I think a couple of things. I try to stay off Instagram.
Oh, that's
But
you're
when
smarter
I
than all of us
do,
put together.
but when I do get sucked in, I mean, I do follow a lot of the people in the body positivity and the fat positivity space. And I think there's a lot of really great things being said. I think there's a lot of judgment being thrown around, which makes sense for women with a history of
Trauma.
trauma.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
all just need to be kinder to each other, period.
Awesome.
Like
Yeah.
we all just need to be kind to Lizzo because
I'm
goddamn,
obsessed with her
if
personally.
anybody
Like,
deserves our love and kindness, it's her.
I literally just gave a client a homework assignment that was to
Yeah.
watch a Lizzo video every day.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted
Yeah.
her to do because she hates herself so much. Just
Right.
watch this video every day.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess that my quick, not quick, my answer to your question is I don't know. Like, I'm not going to profess to know. I, and I do think that is one of the gifts of age is like, there's not like, I'm realizing like, there's no answer. There's just like navigating the path, right? And I don't believe that I will never, like, I'm not like, no diets never, right? I, but I feel like what I'm trying to do for myself is develop a new relationship with food
Yeah.
where and I'm trying to catch myself in my conversations around food, like, which happens so subconsciously sometimes, like,
Get a bunch of women
so,
at a dinner. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, I mean, I was telling our mutual friend Lauren this, like, I was, for my birthday, I went on a trip with a bunch of good friends, and two of my friends and I went on a walk one morning. And these are like very, very successful women. Like one is like the head of, child psychology at a prominent hospital. One is a president and, CEO of her company. And like we will go on this walk and literally we talked about our diets for
Mm.
the entire walk. And I was like, that was like all everybody wanted to talk about was like what they're eating right now, what they're not eating right now, blah, blah. And I was like, I came back to my hotel room and I was like, is this what the male CEOs of companies
I
talk
literally
about
was
when
like,
they go on the
patriarchy
walk
wins.
together?
Like, right? Can you imagine if we set that aside, what we would be like creating in these walks?
Like that was the biggest freaking distraction from the work that we have to do in this world.
Yep.
Like that, like it keeps us so distracted. And
Yeah.
how many times have like super powerful women been in a room ready to change the world, and instead they're worried about like, does my jacket fit right? And does it look
Right. And my
okay? And
they're so heavy on my thighs. Yeah.
yeah,
I think that's right.
it's a total distraction from the work we have to do. So it's like catching ourselves around that stuff. And then it's also like, when I open the fridge and I'm making a decision about what to eat, and I'm like, I'm craving a peanut butter sandwich. And I just like open the fridge and then I'm like, you know, don't have the peanut butter sandwich. That's, you know,
Bad.
800
Right.
calories. That's bad for you. That's
Right.
so much fat. That's bad. Eat
Mm-hmm.
those carrot sticks instead. And
Mm.
then I'm like, I eat the carrot sticks. And then 20 minutes later, I'm back at the fridge because I'm
Right.
like not satisfied. And then I'm eating more stuff, and then I'm eating more stuff. And I feel like that's what I used to do, was not eat the thing I was really craving and wanting, that my body was saying, could I have that, please?
Right.
And then eating a bunch of other stuff instead, because I was never finding that satisfaction. And
Yeah.
so if that's like,
No,
that's
I
my,
actually love that. I actually, so I have this term that I believe I've coined. Isn't that crazy? Actually,
oh
my
yeah,
friend Kirsten came up with it, and then I stole it. But this idea, so I don't believe in intuitive eating. And the only reason is just because of like big food, right? Because they make food that's created for us to crave. So that's hard to say that our intuition
right. Because
is that
there's chemicals that actually
tricky.
trick you into it. Yep.
Here's what I like to think of, and I actually eat this way too now, which is like humble eating, which
Mm-hmm.
like it's like my intuition has education.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say like, well, I'm not putting half and half in my coffee because that's caloric. And like real stuff like from back in the day, right? Skim
Yeah.
milk only and only white meat. Okay. My body like needs fat. And if I'm hungry and it's time for a meal, I need to eat a good amount of food, lots of fat and all this stuff in it. And that's humble. Like that's
Yeah.
like my intuition went to grad school. And that's what it sounds like for you too. I think that it's hard with the intuitive eating, especially if you're like very eating disordered or your intuition's in the ICU right now. But there
Yeah.
are ways that like it's safe to say that eating carrots for lunch is the least loving thing you can do for yourself or anybody else that you're interacting with today.
Totally.
And
And I,
usually you're paying for it later by some kind of like, and I mean paying for it later, not in a diet sense, but in like a self-harm sense, right? Like
right.
nobody feels good after at 10 o'clock when they like ravaged through their cabinets and feeling overwhelmed, and nobody benefits from that. Not you, not me, not the world, right?
Yeah. And I also use this principle that like, so like in business, they always tell you like, if you want to be successful, like look at what the successful people are doing, right? And model that behavior. If you want to be, if you want to be rich, look at what the rich people are doing and model that behavior, right? I think it's kind of the same with food, right? Like there's there are people who don't trip off food.
They're few and far
Like,
between.
but they do exist. And I've met them. And I know a couple of them who just like eat when they want to eat, and they don't eat when they don't want to eat.
I know
And
nobody
they
like this.
really, oh, go find some.
My
It's the
friend
same
Robin
thing.
is my friend Robin is a little bit like this. She's the most, and she eats so healthfully because she was saying she should give up Diet Coke. And I was like, simmer down. You've given up so many things and you eat so healthfully, and I don't think you should worry about it.
Well, the people I'm thinking of don't give up much.
Right.
They just they eat what they want. They eat what they want to eat when they want to eat, but they don't need a lot of it to
Mm.
be satisfied. Like they're just kind of they'll have a little taste of everything, or they'll order a dessert if they want a dessert, and then they'll have 3 or 4 bites, and then they'll be like, I'm good, and they can like let the plate sit there and move on. Like
So
it's
let me
very,
ask you a question, given
yeah.
your like deep education in the human spirit, which because you're a documentary filmmaker, and it's like it seems like most of the films you've made go deep into motivation, love, serve. Like it's not,
Mm.
it's a deep dive when we're hanging out with you watching your movies.
Hmm.
I'm listening to you talk, and the hair on the back, the trauma, my preverbal and my ketamine trauma is coming up, because I think there's always, I think, like Gabor Mate says, not why addiction, why pain. And I wonder if these people that you're talking about have these life experiences that often lead to big time eating disorders and big time addictions. And I more so am wondering, in your experience, like diving into people's lives the way that you do, like what have you seen about the human spirit managing life's trickiness?
Oh, that's a really cool question. I mean, I think what I have witnessed on this planet is that nobody came here for a free ride. None of us, nobody gets to avoid pain. Like it's just part of the deal, right? Being here.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people who have a very, very unfair share of the trauma.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who have a lot less. And it's just not fair.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I've come to for myself is like, and I mostly because I feel incredibly lucky. Like I think I'm one of those people that, I've had some shit go down in my life, but not that much. And I'm pretty privileged. I've been pretty blessed. And those just happen to be the cards I got dealt. There's no reason why I deserve them more than other people. Like, there's no reason why any of us who have privilege are any more deserving than those who don't. Like, it's pretty messed up
Yeah.
and pretty unfair.
Karma's tricky, isn't it? Yeah.
Karma's tricky. We could call it karma. I mean, I don't know what it is, but my way of kind of making sense of it for myself and it is just like in this lifetime our souls came here to get what they needed.
Absolutely. I mean,
And
wholeheartedly agree with that.
and so my soul just might need something than somebody else's soul who got a tougher deck this time around, and and all I can do is respect that soul, like with all of my heart and soul, right? So I mean, like I think I made a film about women who lost their children. I mean,
can you tell us about it? Lauren,
yeah,
when Lauren was on our podcast, she was talking about it, and it was like a beautiful story. So I'd love to hear about it.
yeah, I mean, I don't think I could have made it now that I have my own child, to be honest. I made it before I had children of my own, and I was
But
it was
what was the
inspired.
premise?
Well, so I was inspired by a friend of mine who had this was in my early 30s. I had a good friend whose 17-year-old son died in a car accident. And it was just devastating. And I had known people who'd lost parents. I'd known people who'd lost siblings. I had never met anybody in my life before who had lost their child. And it was such a very specific and devastating and intense form of grief. And then at the same time in my life, I was doing a lot of volunteer work. I was doing a lot of service work. And it was something that I found to be really healing to do. And I think that a lot of times when people think like, oh, something tragic has happened to me, that they feel like, oh, now I need to go internal and go inside my house and lock all the doors and be alone and deal with my grief and deal with my pain. And what I found was actually getting outside of myself. And somebody I know coined the phrase like get a bigger problem. And about doing volunteer work, it's like if you think your life sucks, go go do some volunteer work for people whose lives really suck and get a bigger problem. And so I was kind of engaged in that work at the time, and then I had this idea, like I was like, okay, here's my friend who's had this massive tragedy, like could going and doing some kind of volunteer work like be a healing thing for her to do. And so uh, I was planning this trip to Africa for myself because I wanted to go do some volunteer work there. And I called her up and I said, I had this crazy idea. Like, do you think it would be like, could it be healing for you to do a trip like this?
Mm.
And she, like instantly broke down crying and she was like, yes, oh my God, I want to go. I feel like it could be so healing. And then I was like, what if we brought like a group of women and we just like kind of tested this theory, like could being of service be healing to people who've been through this kind of tragedy, and what would that look like? And so the idea just kind of snowballed from there.
Well,
And
it got some divine infusion, it sounds like.
yeah. And 6 months later, we were in Africa with a film crew and a group of 6 women who'd all lost a child, and we filmed the whole trip. And it was very interesting because I think in my original thesis, I thought we're going to bring these women who've lost children to Africa to work in an orphanage with children who've lost parents.
Mhm.
So bringing those two groups together, and that service, that those connections with those kids would be really healing. But really, what happened on the trip, and which was so unexpected to me and so beautiful, was it was actually the most healing part was the women's connections with each other, and what it meant for them to spend these 3 weeks with other women who'd been through a similar thing, and when they had felt so alone and so isolated at home and like the only person that this had ever happened to. And it was incredibly healing for all of them to know each other, to be together, to be able to talk about their kids in like a really open way that they felt like they couldn't really do with other people without freaking out other people. um,
Right.
there's like crazy little conversations like, oh, well, what did you do at your funeral? Because at our funeral,
Right.
we had white flowers, but I wish we had had red flowers, or just like those kind of conversations that they just felt like they couldn't have with their
Well,
friends, but they
yeah.
could
And
have with
I
each
also
other.
wonder if like one of my teachers always talks about like woundology, that we
Mm.
really can like live in our wounds and operate off of them and then stay really sick in them. But it's interesting as you're talking, I'm like, I wonder if it's because they were so actively sharing their souls and being of service that the way that they could integrate their grief together was in such a healthy way. Because there's just a permutation of that story where a
Yeah,
bunch of women get together and they never integrate that trauma. But it's almost like by being of service, they were like integrating that
yeah.
trauma and connecting. I mean, now I have to go watch the movie. I'm a terrible podcaster. Watch it, but it sounds
Full
do
disclosure, it was my first movie. I haven't watched it in like over 10 years. I should go
we
back
have a
and watch
viewing
it.
party?
I'll make sure I want to go back and watch it, make sure it's good before I recommend it
Okay,
to
get back to us.
you.
Stay tuned, everybody. I also
That's
am
right.
like a little bit obsessed with what I read about it, but the other movie about the ultra marathon runners who are not actually
Mm.
ultra marathon runners.
Yeah, well, some of them are now, but they weren't then. Yeah, that was probably the biggest adventure of my lifetime. I went to 7 continents, and in all 7 continents in one year, to film
God.
this film about these
That's
crazy
before you had kids too, right?
yes. And then I got pregnant while I was editing, and the edit took almost 3 years for that film. And I was like, I had one more round of editing to finish it, and I was 8 months pregnant. And I was like, I have to finish this film. I have to finish it
You got to
now. So
birth
like
that, and
literally,
then you got to birth the next thing, right?
yeah. So I finished Desert Runners with my belly out to here, like sitting in with my feet up because my ankles were like this thick, for like 3 weeks, and then I had my baby.
Wait, did you see the Netflix one about Anna Delvey where the same thing happened to the woman who
Oh
was
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh
the
yeah, I did.
just like had to crack the case.
I could relate to her. Yes, totally.
But it sounds to me, so I haven't seen it, but it sounds to me like that's a story of resilience. That's a story of like talk about like mind over mind. Like like was there any commonalities you saw? It's basically like these kind of average Joes deciding they're going to become ultra marathoners. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I got inspired to make the film because I was at a conference, and this guy it's so funny. He was 56. At the time, I was like, why is this old man gonna run this race? Now I'm like, oh my God.
I know. I'm
Not
like,
that
oh,
old.
yeah, this is pretty young.
I know. Oh my God. It's like embarrassing. Dave, if you're out there, I'm sorry for
Dave,
thinking
we
you were
love you.
old at
We're getting old
56.
too. Mhm.
56 is young.
Very.
But at the time I was like, yeah. So at the time he was 56. I think my mom was like, gosh, this was 10, 12 years ago. So my mom was probably in her late 60s. She was a little older than him. But basically at the time my mom had been really sick. Um, and I went to this conference where this guy, Dave O'Brien, was talking about that he was going to run this ultra marathon. At the time, like I think ultras are a big thing now,
Yeah,
but
they're
this is
100
back.
miles or more, right? Like 100 miles.
Well, I think technically anything over a marathon's called an ultra. Like they kind of start at like 50 milers or whatever. But this race series is 150 miles over 5 days, basically. So it's it's basically the first 4 days are a marathon each. You do a marathon each day, and then on the last day you do a double marathon, like 50 plus miles.
And I think
Um,
myself like an incredibly resilient person. Like I think of myself an incredible person.
yeah,
And I just like, I guess, I don't know. I'm interested in what you think of this. I'm like, no way I could do that. 0%.
right,
No way.
right.
No
So
way.
that's
Zero.
so what. So
That's what the movie's about.
you're hitting on exactly why I was like, what's happening here?
What
Because
is
because
happening
yeah, because I was like, he announces that he's going to do this race, which I didn't even know races like this existed at the time.
at
And then I
56?
at 56, and I was like, my mother thinks she can't even walk around the block.
Word.
Why does this guy think he can do this? And that for me was like fascinating. I was like, how does this work? Like, how do some people think something is possible that most people would say is impossible? And like, what's going on there, like with their mentality that they're just like, they just decide, like, oh yeah, I could do that. Like, where like you and I and most people would be like, oh no, that's not on my agenda.
Here's like what I think too, though. Like, and maybe I'm not, maybe I'm big into like what the language that comes out of your mouth. I would never want to do that. I bet if I really wanted to do that, I could do that.
Well, it's
Well,
funny that you
as
say that.
evidenced by your movie, but tell me more.
Well, it's funny that you say that because I mean, I spent a year out there in the desert with these people, kind of trying to get like to the bottom of it all. And when after spending, these intensive weeks together out in the deserts, like, a lot of we became friends. Like we definitely were like, this group of crazy people out there in the desert. But they were like they trying like my cameraman and I, they were, of course these runners are like, you should do the next one with us. Come do it with us, come do it. And like you're so wrapped up in their world that you're like, could I, should I? And then finally by the end of the year, I was like, no, no, no. I just really don't want to.
Yeah.
Like nothing in me wants to do this.
I felt that way about marathons my whole life. Like,
Yeah,
I don't really want to do much of anything for 4 hours. Like,
no,
you know,
yeah.
maybe have sex.
I
Even that I wouldn't want to have sex for 4 hours. No, it's like really
no.
nothing. I don't want to watch a movie for 4 hours. I maybe want to sleep. Like that's it.
Yeah, sleep for sure, but I
That's
can't
it.
think of much else. Yeah,
I don't know. But
yeah.
anyway, bless them. How did they go? Like, how did that transpire for him at 56 years old to becoming like all these kind of normal Joes? How did they do it?
I mean, you got to watch the movie. I don't want to spoiler alerts,
Well,
but I will.
spoil a little, like mini spoiler alert.
I mean, I would say this is the thing I always say when I talk about it. So I would always ask them, what's going to happen if you don't make it?
Mm.
Like you've set this amazing goal for yourself. Like what's going to happen if you don't make it? And they would look at me and go, what? But I'm going to make it.
Mm.
And then I was like, and I always like joke because I'm like, this California girl. A lot of these people are from all over the world, all different. There was like people from 40 something different countries. So like all different countries, all different cultures, all different backgrounds. I'm like this, California girl. I'm like, no, no, how's it gonna feel if you don't make it? And they're like, no, no, I'll make it.
Yeah.
And I got that answer so many times, and I was like, why won't they answer my question?
Right.
And then after like 20 times of getting the same answer, I was like, oh, like they're not considering that as an option.
They're not, yeah.
Like that's not something they're entertaining in their minds. Like they like the reason they're going to make it is because that's the only option. Like that is what I saw when I was out there, that the only difference, it wasn't fitness, it had nothing to do with fitness.
Oh,
I saw the fittest people in the world who did not finish, and I saw people that you would not think could do one marathon, let alone 6 in 5 days,
right.
completely finish. It had nothing to do with fitness. It had nothing to do with body size or type. It had nothing to do with experience. The only difference between the people who finished and the people who did not finish was that the people who finished always believed they would.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who did not finish had quitting or stopping in their mind as an
An
option.
option. Yeah. Well, that's
The
there's life.
that
There's
was
life
it.
in it. There's life. There it is.
Yep.
The ones who had quitting and stopping as an option, do you think there was any like shame response in it or like fear of failure? Tell me more. She's nodding her head. She's saying yes.
Yeah. Oh, I'm saying, oh, sorry, I forgot. Not everybody
Unless you're
has the
watching it
video.
on YouTube and they're like,
I am nodding profusely
I'm
to
always very
the
careful about
people on
that.
audio. No, I forgot.
Tim
There's no
Ferriss taught
audio.
me that. He's very good about like telling what's happening.
Thank you, Tim Ferriss. Yes. So the most surprising one was I think we were in the Sahara Desert, and there was this woman who just, like, she was considered like possibly like one of the top, she was going to come in the top 3. Like, she was super fit, I think she was a professional athlete. She was like, we were like, oh, this woman's going to like kill
Like
it,
she's
she's going to,
pony
yeah,
work
she's
not. Yeah.
right. And on the second day, she was like limping into camp, and her knee was like giving her problems. And then on the third day, she went home, and we were just like, what just happened? Like, it was fascinating to watch. And I watched her get insecure out there, like on the first day. Like, they said she was going to be in third place. I think she came in sixth. And you could tell she was just like
That's like where the
beating her.
brain started.
Yeah, you could tell she was just beating herself up about it. You could tell she had a story going, that she just wasn't good enough. She wasn't doing what was expected of her. She wasn't, she was grumpy. She was upset. She was like, you could tell that mentally she was beating herself up
Wow.
like bad. And
This links to
then,
diet culture in a very enormous way. Mm-hmm.
yeah, right. And within 3 days, she was injured. I
Right.
mean, injured. I don't
Right.
know if she was really injured, but she took herself out, is what it looked like to us. And it was fascinating to watch, because meanwhile, we are, filming people who are at the back of the pack. They've
Right.
got zero expectations on themselves about needing to be in the top 10, right? Like, zero expectations. Like, a win for them is like, I just crossed the finish line eventually. I don't care when.
Yeah.
Like, and these people, and it was interesting, and this is a little bit of like, male female stuff, but like, my camera guy was like obsessed with filming like the people in the front of the pack that were like racing to win, and like the guys who were like, the super
Right.
athletes who were like racing it. I was like, I'm so not interested in those guys. I want to go talk to these people who are in the back of the pack. I'm
Yeah.
like fascinated by the walkers, the
Me
people
too.
who are just like, oh, and I didn't mention, but like, one of the things about these races is you have to carry a backpack on your back with all of your gear, like, to everything you need to
How
survive.
heavy are they?
They're heavy. They're like, I mean, the goal is to be an amazing packer and make it as light as possible, obviously, because you have to carry it. But it's like
I'd be
your food,
terrible at that.
your clothes, your sleep gear, everything. The only thing the race provides is water, which you also have to carry your own water bottles, but you can refill them at least. That's the only thing the race provides. Everything else is self-supported. So, um, so there's these people in the back of the pack that seriously, like, not professional athletes, like people that you would just be like,
Like a
in your
mall with,
like
right.
in judgmental mode, you'd be like, what are you doing here? This is a bad idea for you.
Did you know this is an ultra marathon? Yeah, right.
Did you get the note about the 6 marathons in 5 days? Like, why are you here? And they finished every time.
Wow.
They were my favorite people in the whole wide world. It was so
I'm
inspiring.
always, you and I would have I'm always obsessed who's at the end. When I used to run my boarding
Yeah.
school I would always be like at the back with the kids that were like trying to do the 3 miles, and I would just like crawl with them. Because also from my own stuff, like at the back of
Yeah.
the pack. I wonder
Yeah. But it's
also
so
what,
inspiring.
oh my God, because I also wonder, because I always think like I always am happy to treat the most desperate, because the absence of alternatives is such a motivator if you really
Yeah.
want to live, you know? So I was thinking about when I finally did tackle my eating disorder and addiction, and it was really having to stop trying to kill myself with food all the time. And I was so scared of feelings. I don't know. I couldn't have told you that. But when I did it, I remember literally
Mm.
like Amy Winehouse lying on the kitchen floor,
Mm.
screaming at the top of my lungs, because it's like, if you want to know why you're binge eating, stop binge eating. And there was a lot of
Right.
pain there, and it came up like a green monster. But I sort of also remember like, oh, I did it. Okay. And it was
Yeah.
imperfect after that. But I think I had always just had these rationalizations. Oh, it's not that big of a deal. It'll just be this one last night, blah, blah, and finally I just gave myself no alternatives but to do it. And I think that's
Yeah.
like a big piece. I mean, it sounds like that too with this. I mean, I have to watch this. I'm not even waiting for you to rewatch this. This is,
This one I don't have to rewatch. This one's good.
yeah, you're like obsessed with it.
I like it.
Hey, what's your like dream? Do you have any dream documentaries in your brain right now? Like, especially in this
Um,
new like owning your body vibe that you're in? Talk to me. Should we do it together?
I,
Just kidding. Not really.
no, yes, we should.
Great. I can't
Because
wait.
honestly, this is I mean, this is what I've been thinking about lately. And I don't quite know the road into it yet. But I mean, like similar to the work you do, I think you had to live it to be able to teach it, and I feel like this is the thing that I haven't wanted to tell the world about, has been my issue for my entire life. And I'm like, let's just be honest about it already. Everybody knows.
The other thing
um,
though, it's so systemic, and the generational trauma is so profound that I don't even think we always think of it as an issue. I mean,
yes. And I think that the piece around, like, we think this is the tricky thing about all of it, I think, is that we think it's an issue about us and our self-control, and if we're doing it right or wrong or good or bad or whatever, like we've internalized it as our issue. But this is patriarchy working on women.
thousand
Like,
percent.
and that's the piece. Like I want women to get furious
Yeah, me too.
about diet culture. Like
I
I
mean,
want
diet
women to be
culture, but
like,
also like menopause culture. I mean, there's like this thing is
all of it.
systemic, because when I had Suzanne Lentz on, who you should know, I mean, when she was talking about what she's experienced as an OBGYN who works largely in menopause, and what women have tried to do to stop menopause, what women have tried to do to stop aging, I'm like, this is diet culture. This is the whole thing. It's
And
unbelievable.
yeah, and also just the fact that like yesterday I had lunch with a couple of friends of mine who were all around the same age, and one of them has been having like a lot of issues transitioning into menopause. And she's just like, she was telling us how she had to write a letter this long to her entire medical team, because she has like all these doctors. She's been having this problem for like 3 years. Nobody, and every time she talks to somebody about it, they're like, I don't know, it could be this, it could be that, blah, blah. She wrote this letter, and she was like, this is the year that this gets fixed, everybody. And I need all of you to give me all the tests and all the things. And I need you to talk to each other. But she had to write this letter,
Yeah, she's like an ultra marathoner now. She's like, there
right,
are no alternatives. I'm not quitting. Sorry.
in order to get everybody's attention, just to like fix her one little problem. And I was like, and I was said to her, I was like, why do you think they can't fix it? And she's like, because they don't know anything about women's bodies. And I was like, it's so true. They don't know anything. Like literally the idea that women's health is even should be a separate thing is only like, what, 20 years old, maybe 30 years old. And so that's like, that is the history of patriarchy. Like
Yeah.
that is like that, like we are so far behind. Like, let me tell you, if men were having these problems, in mid-age,
Yep. Not even a
there'd
thing.
be there'd be some fucking AI scanner machine that you walked in and would like fix all your shit in like 5 minutes. And that
It's
would have been
very true.
invented 30 years ago.
No, and I think that's like really that meme was really powerful to me. Like, who is making money? Because that's my big thing too, is just all the quacky quacks out there. And this coach is going to tell you, and all the coaches, and they know this from the Weight Watchers data, everyone's trying to keep you in the cycle forever because it costs, client acquisition is a very expensive business. It's like the whole thing about business
Yeah.
development is that client acquisition. So of course they want to keep you in the cycle forever. I think for me though, I do
But
think
that's
there's a
that's
middle
the
path.
capitalism. That's the capitalism piece and that's the money piece. But I think the control piece for
Oh,
me is
thousand.
even,
Oh, honey, I'm so
yeah,
like
yeah,
billion%. Let me march with you. We'll get our hats on the whole nine. Of course. I just
yeah,
think a
that piece
great
is
way
like
to control us is through capitalism.
totally.
And the belief and the capitalistic belief is saying you're not enough. See, you have one more. There's one more level you can do. Here's one more level. It's just keeping
Yeah,
us in there forever. I
yeah,
just think there's some kind of middle path between, you know, wanting to take care of your body in a way. And if you feel like you're not in the right body, I feel like you deserve to be in a different body. If you're 300 pounds and you say, this is not the body I'm supposed to be in. And I knew that for myself. And this is actually
yeah,
the body I'm supposed to be in. I know that. And what I do to maintain it is super loving, super loving. What I was doing to maintain that other size body was suicidal. I mean,
yeah,
literally. I think that's the curve here, is that there's really some kind of middle path that I think we're missing. Yeah.
yeah. I feel like I want to like talk with you about for like 6 hours about that
Right.
because I feel like that's
Well, we're
definitely
hanging
like
in Vegas, so that's exciting.
no, but I'm so curious about that too. Like because I feel like I'm looking for that middle path. Like
Yeah.
I'm trying to undo, you know, 50 years of negative talk to myself, but at the same time I'm like I'm trying to be honest about the fact that like I still want this weight off my body. Like
Yeah, I think it's a
I still don't it's not comfortable. Like and then so it's like getting to that place where you're like it's not comfortable for me. Like it's not because I
right.
think it's not I don't want it off my body because I care what other people think about what I look like or like I don't care what like like I'm trying to not do it for that reason
Yeah.
or like because I think I'm going to be happier or people are going to like me more or
Right. Not
people
like
are going to like
not like
accept
a
me more.
perfectionistic
Right.
destination of your body.
Right. But I do want it off my body for me. Like it
Yeah.
just does feel better.
I'm with you. I think there's like, I always think about it like sort of the spiritual cost of doing business. I think there's a weight I could be that's much less than that would really cost me spiritually. And I'm not willing to cross those lines, period.
Mm, mm,
And then there's a cost of doing business in this body, which makes me feel so happy and healthy and empowered.
mm,
And I'm not small. I'm not a small person. Not, I
yeah.
mean, anyway, but certainly not my body. And I have to say that we've made such strides that I just think about watching that Target commercial last year with all the bodies in different bathing suits and just thinking, I cried watching it. Like I was
Yeah.
so happy. Like there's so much work we have to do, but if Target's making that, then maybe people like you and I can help to move the movement. Hey,
Yeah.
where do we find you? Where do we watch your movies? I mean, you and I are gonna be besties, so I'm not worried about that, but let's help the listener.
Well, there's links to everything at my website,
Right.
uh which is easier. Either my name, jennifersteinman.com, or my company's Walnut and Rose. So that's an easier one to remember, maybe walnutandrose.com. And then my most recent movie is streaming right now on HBO Max and
Oh,
Discovery Plus, and it's called Hi, I'm Nancy Rubin, and it's a love letter to one of my high school teachers. It's a hi, the series is called Hi, I'm Blank, and each episode is about a different inspirational person who's just done cool things in the world. And so I got to make one about this very inspiring and life-changing high school teacher that I had.
Well, I love that.
And hopefully it's a love letter to teachers everywhere too. I
Right.
mean, I think after the pandemic, I really wanted to do something that was like, thank you, teachers, for all that you do, because they are the most undervalued people in this country. And they're holding our future in their hands every day. So yeah.
Well, I'm going to be having a Jen Steinman movie night if anybody wants to stream in with me. And I'm
This is
so
so cool.
loving having you on the show. And also, of course, you can come to Own Your Worth. You probably only can get a ticket because this is going to be airing on the 29th. So you can just go get your online ticket and you can go see her and you can see me and so many other amazing people. And thank you so much for coming on the show. I love you.
I love you too. I can't wait to do your class in person.
Oh, it's going to
It's
be
going to be
amazing.
so
It's going to
fun.
be amazing.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Thank
good.
you.